Welcome to the Future Qi Podcast.
Welcome back to the Future Qi. This is episode 06.
We made it to 6.
We did. And if you've been following this series, you know exactly where we are standing right now.
Right in the middle of a crime scene.
Yes, exactly. In the best possible way, though. I mean, last time in episode 05, we found the channels.
We did.
We looked at the Primo Vascular System, that hidden highway of fiber optic threads inside your blood vessels and wrapping your organs. We proved the hardware exists.
Right. And if you haven't listened to that investigation yet, you should hit pause and go back.
Yeah.
Because everything we discussed today relies entirely on that foundation. We found the wiring. So
today we have to figure out how to turn the power on.
Exactly.
Because having a physical anatomical wire that only gets you halfway there, you have to ask the next logical question, what is flowing through it?
And that brings us to the single most difficult question in the history of East Asian medicine.
Oh, yeah.
The question that has divided families, ended friendships, and frankly confused patients for over a century.
I call it the dinner table dilemma.
I think every practitioner listening right now just felt a collective shiver go down their spine.
You know the scene. You are at a dinner party, maybe it's a wedding, you're a licensed acupuncturist, and maybe you've been in practice for 10, 15 years. You treat complex chronic pain, fertility issues.
Digestive disorders?
Yeah.
You know what you are doing.
You absolutely know what you're doing. So you're eating your salad, having a nice time, and the person across from you, let's say it's an engineer or maybe a very skeptical cousin, they lean in, they have that look.
The raised eyebrow.
The cynical eyebrow. And they ask, so what is qi? Is it like energy? Is it magic?
And you freeze.
You absolutely freeze. Because in your head, you're running through this massive flowchart of bad options. If you say, yes, it's energy, you immediately sound like a mystic who believes in fairies.
Right. You lose all scientific credibility before the main course even arrives.
But the alternative is just as bad. If you say, oh, ignore the old books, it's just a metaphor for blood flow and oxygen.
Yeah.
You feel cheap. You feel like a sellout.
You feel like you're betraying a 2,000-year-old medical system that you know is vastly more complex than just circulation.
Exactly. You are stuck between sounding like a wizard or a reductionist. So today, our mission is to solve this dilemma. Permanently. We are going to build an answer that doesn't compromise on the tradition, but holds up under the harshest scientific scrutiny.
And we are going to do it by looking at the word itself. Let's start with the Chinese character for qi.
I love this part, because most people see it on a tattoo or a scroll, and they think it's just an abstract squiggle.
Not at all. It is a technical diagram. It's a pictograph. The bottom part of the character represents a pot of uncooked rice.
Okay.
And the top part represents the vapor or the steam rising off that rice as it cooks.
Rice and steam.
Now think about the ancient Chinese mind. They weren't being poetic just for the sake of it. They were phenomenalists.
Meaning they observed nature.
Right, they were looking at physics. When they looked at that steam, what were they actually seeing?
Well, they were seeing water.
They were seeing water, but water in a transformed state. Think about the physics here. Water in the pot is heavy. It's inert, it's a liquid. You add heat, which is energy, and it undergoes a phase change. It becomes invisible mostly. It expands.
It carries heat.
Yes, and it has force. Enough force to lift a lid or eventually turn a massive turbine. It moves. It does work. But fundamentally, it is a physical substance that has changed phase.
So when they chose that character to describe the life force, they weren't saying magic spirit energy.
No, they were saying transformed substance that does work.
And that right there is the thesis for today's investigation. The ancients weren't describing magic, they were describing physics. But here is the twist that the critics never saw coming.
Qi isn't one thing.
This is the qi.
It is the absolute qi. We keep looking for the qi particle. We want to find the qi boson. But qi is a composite signal. It is a combined output of 7 measurable physical forces.
And modern science has discovered every single one of them.
It just gave them different names.
Today, we are going to unify that vocabulary. But before we get to the 7 forces, the 7 faces of qi, we have to play fair. We have to be skeptical.
You have to build a steel man.
Right. Not a straw man where we knock down a weak argument. A steel man. We need to articulate the strongest arguments against the existence of qi, because if we can't answer them, we shouldn't be recording this conversation.
Agreed.
Yeah.
If I am that skeptical engineer at the dinner table, I have 3 major problems with what you are about to tell me.
Let's hear them. Objection number 1. The reductionist trap. This is the argument that says, look, you are just renaming biology. If you find electricity in the body, just call it electricity. If you find ATP, call it ATP. Why do we need to drag this archaic word qi into the 21st century to describe things we already have perfectly good scientific names for?
It is a totally valid challenge. Why use a 2,000-year-old umbrella term for distinct modern processes? It feels unnecessary.
Then there's objection number 2, the unification problem. This is the one that trips me up sometimes, honestly. Even if we admit there's bioelectricity and heat and chemical signals, calling them all qi is like saying my car, my toaster, and my watch are all the same thing because they are made of metal.
Right. How do we know these aren't just 7 separate systems doing their own thing?
Exactly. You have to prove they are integrated into a single network. Just listing them isn't enough.
You have to show the connection.
And objection number 3, the Becker problem. We're going to talk a lot about Robert O. Becker today. He's a hero in this space. But the critics will say Becker was a fringe figure. He wasn't mainstream. Using controversial science to prove controversial medicine is circular reasoning.
That is the toughest one. But we have a plan. We are going to answer all 3 of these objections by the end of the hour.
And we aren't going to use fringe science to do it. We're going to use mainstream replicated data.
So let's get into it, the investigation. We're going to walk through the 7 faces of qi one by one and give equal time to each.
Mechanism number 1, the electric body. This starts with the man we just mentioned, the pioneer.
Dr. Robert O. Becker.
Set the scene for us. It's the 1960s.
It's the 60s. We have this conventional view of the body as a chemical machine. You eat food, chemicals react, muscles move. Electricity is just for the brain and the heart.
Just quick flashes of AC current to trigger an action, right?
Exactly. Everything else is chemistry. But Becker says, wait a minute.
Because he was an orthopedic surgeon.
Yes. And he was obsessed with salamanders. Specifically why a salamander can get its leg chopped off and grow a perfect new one. Bone, muscle, nerve, and all. But a human just forms a stump.
He didn't think it was just a chemical difference.
He suspected it was electrical. And what he found changed everything. He found the current of injury.
What is that?
When a salamander, or a human for that matter, gets cut, the body generates a specific signal at the wound site. But it's not the AC current of nerves. It is a slow, steady, direct current signal, DC current.
Like a battery.
Like a battery. It changes polarity to become negative. And this DC current physically guides stem cells to the area to start rebuilding.
So it's a control signal. It's not just noise, it is an instruction.
It is a directing force. If you block that current in a salamander, the limb doesn't grow back. If you restore the current using a battery, it does.
That is incredible. But how does this connect to acupuncture points?
Becker did something audacious. He decided to map the electrical conductivity of human skin. He took a voltmeter and went looking for spots on the body that conducted electricity better than others.
And he found them.
He found them. Tiny points of high conductivity, which means low electrical resistance. And when he plotted these points on a chart, they matched the classical acupuncture charts point for point.
Wow, so acupuncture points are literally electrical sockets.
They are nodes in the body's DC electrical grid. And to address the skepticism right away, this isn't just Becker anymore. This has been replicated.
Right. On and colleagues in 2008.
Exactly. They reviewed 20 studies at the University of Vermont and confirmed that acupuncture points have 10 to 50 times lower electrical resistance than the skin right next to them.
So when we talk about qi as a directing force...
We are talking about DC bioelectricity. That is face number 1.
Okay, that's electricity. Let's move to light. Mechanism number 2, the glowing cell.
This brings us to Fritz Albert Popp in the 1970s, a German biophysicist. He made a claim that sounded absolutely insane at the time. He said living cells emit light.
And just to be clear, you don't mean reflection, you mean emission, like a firefly.
Emission. Actual photons. He built a machine called a photomultiplier tube that could detect light at incredibly low levels. We're talking the equivalent of a candle flame at a distance of 10 miles.
That is sensitive.
Very. And he found that every living thing, plants, animals, humans, is constantly emitting ultra-weak light. He called them biophotons.
Is this just heat, like thermal radiation?
No, that is the key distinction. Thermal radiation is chaotic. The waves go everywhere. Popp analyzed this light and found it was coherent, like a laser.
A biological laser.
Exactly. Popp discovered that DNA acts as a source and receiver of this light. He proposed that the body uses this light to communicate instantly across the entire system. Chemical signals are slow, they have to float through the blood. Light is instantaneous.
So our cells are literally texting each other with light.
Yes. And here's the connection to our last episode. Remember the Primo Vascular System, the PVS.
Fiber optic cables we found inside the blood vessel.
Right, those semi-transparent threads. The leading hypothesis now is that the PVS acts as the fiber optic network to carry these biophotons, because if you have a light signal, you need a channel to guide it so it doesn't just scatter.
So when the ancients said qi moves through the channels, and they often use light metaphors,
They might have been literally describing the flow of biophotons. We also know that sick light looks different. Healthy cells emit a steady, coherent stream. Cancer cells, their light creates a chaotic, scrambled signal. Popp called it loss of coherence.
so qi in its role as a communication signal is biophotons.
Precisely. That's phase number 2.
All right, let's get a little more physical, something we can feel. Mechanism number 3, the engine room.
This is where we tackle the word energy, because physicists hate how healers use that word. In physics, energy is joules. It is the capacity to do work. It's not a vibe.
But the body does have a very specific way of creating energy.
It does. It happens in the mitochondria. We all learned this in high school biology, the powerhouse of the cell. But let's look at it through a TCM lens. Inside the mitochondria, you have these little motors called ATP synthase. They spin at 9,000 RPM. They create ATP, adenosine triphosphate.
And ATP is the fuel.
It is the currency of life. Every time your heart beats, you spend ATP. Every time you think a thought, digest a sandwich, or fight a virus, you boon ATP.
So let's look at the clinical translation here. In TCM, we have a diagnosis called qi deficiency.
Right. What does a qi deficient patient look like?
Fatigue, weak voice, poor digestion, spontaneous sweating, weak pulse.
If you take those symptoms to a biologist, what do they see?
They see mitochondrial insufficiency.
Exactly. Fatigue means not enough ATP for muscles. Poor digestion means not enough ATP for peristalsis, the gut movement. Weak pulse means the cardiac muscle lacks the fuel for a strong contraction. It maps perfectly.
And what about the pharmacology, the herbs?
This is the smoking gun. We have herbs we call ketonics, ginseng, cordyceps. For 2,000 years, we've said they boost qi. Modern pharmacology looks at ginseng and finds the ginsenosides specifically upregulate mitochondrial ATP production.
So we weren't just guessing.
We were describing the fuel level of the qi is fuel is mitochondrial ATP, phase number 3.
Okay, moving on. Mechanism number 4. This one is huge because it's new, like 2018 new.
The new organ, the interstitium.
I remember the headlines, scientists discover a new organ. And I remember thinking, how did you miss an organ? Did you just not look left?
It is actually a fascinating story of technology blindness. See, for 100 years, when we looked at tissue under a microscope, we used slides. To make a slide, you chemically fix the tissue, which drains all the fluid out, and then you squash it flat.
So you are looking at a dried up pancake.
Right. And when you look at that pancake, you see this dense wall of connective tissue. We thought it was just wrapping. But in 2018, researchers at NYU used a new technique called confocal laser endomicroscopy.
Which is basically looking at living tissue inside the body without cutting it out.
Exactly. And what did they see? They didn't see a solid wall. They saw a honeycomb, a massive body-wide network of fluid-filled spaces. It wasn't solid fascia. It was a highway of fluid.
And this fluid connects everything.
Everything. It wraps every muscle, every organ, every vessel. It's a shock absorber, but it's also a transport system.
Now in TCM, we have a system called the Sanjiao, the triple burner.
The official who governs the waterways. The ancient texts describe this formless organ that manages the movement of fluids and qi throughout the body's cavities. For centuries, anatomists said this Sanjiao thing is mythical. There's no organ that looks like that.
Until 2018.
Until we found the interstitium. And here is where we have to mention the Huangdi Jing, the Yellow Emperor's inner canon. This text described the system governing the waterways of qi 2 millennia ago, 2,000 years. The language of anatomy finally caught up to the map.
It just took 7 instruments to do it.
Yes. So qi, in its role as a fluid transporter, is interstitial fluid dynamics. That is phase number 4.
Now, mechanism number 5. This one explains what happens when I actually stick a needle in you. The spark.
Piezoelectricity. Piezo comes from Greek, meaning to squeeze or to press. Certain crystalline materials like quartz generate an electrical charge when you squeeze them.
And the body is full of crystals.
It is full of collagen. And collagen fibers act like piezoelectric crystals.
So what happens when an acupuncturist twists a needle?
This is the work of Dr. Helene Langevin. She used ultrasound to watch acupuncture in real time. When you insert the needle and do that little twist, which is standard technique to get Qi. The collagen fibers in the fascia wind around the needle like spaghetti on a fork.
That creates tension.
It creates mechanical stress. It pulls on the web. And because collagen is piezoelectric, that mechanical stress instantly converts into an electrical charge.
You are generating electricity by twisting the needle.
You are. You aren't summoning magic from the ether. You are acting as a mechanical transducer. You are creating a piezoelectric signal that propagates through the fascial web. And remember, Becker?
The low resistance points.
The fascia conducts this signal along those exact lines of least resistance, the meridians.
So Qi, as the signal activated by the needle, is piezoelectricity. Face number 5.
2 more to go.
Mechanism number 6. We are going back to the steam, the chemical vapor.
We talked about the rice and steam character, Qi. We said it wasn't a metaphor.
It turns out there is a literal gas that controls the body.
Nitric oxide. It's a gasotransmitter. It is a signaling molecule that is literally a gas. It diffuses through cell membranes like a ghost. It is the master regulator of blood flow and tells blood vessels to relax and open up. Vasodilation. It also regulates the immune system and mitochondrial efficiency.
And acupuncture triggers this.
Huge amounts of it. When you puncture the skin or apply heat like Moxa or even light, the local cells release a burst of nitric oxide.
So when we say moving Qi to treat pain or stagnation,
We are physically triggering the release of nitric oxide, which opens the blood vessels and flushes the area with fresh oxygen and nutrients. We are moving the vapor to restore flow.
Qi, as the regulator, is nitric oxide. Face number 6.
And finally, mechanism number 7, the thermal map.
Because if it's energy, it should have heat, right?
Exactly. Physics dictates that work generates heat. If Qi is real work, we should be able to see it with an infrared camera.
And we can.
There have been studies on Qigong masters. People who cultivate this energy emitting measurable near-infrared radiation from their palms. Not just body heat. High-intensity infrared in the therapeutic range.
And on the patient.
This is even cooler when you stimulate an acupuncture point. Thermography cameras show the heat doesn't just spread out in a circle, it travels in a line.
Along the meridian.
Along the meridian. A study by the Korean Institute of Oriental Medicine showed this clearly. The heat follows the path of least resistance. The channel.
So Qi as a thermal signature is infrared radiation.
Face number 7.
Okay, let's pause. That is a lot of information. We have bioelectricity, biophotons, ATP interstitium, piezoelectricity, nitric oxide, and infrared radiation, the 7 faces.
Right.
But here is where the skeptical part of my brain kicks in again. This is great, but TCM doesn't just say Qi. It has all these specific types.
Yuan Qi.
Ying Qi, Wei Qi, Zong Qi, Zheng Qi. Are we just ignoring those?
Not at all. This is where the unification gets really satisfying. The ancients were brilliant observers. They classified Qi based on what it did, and now we can map those functional descriptions directly to these physical mechanisms.
Let's look at the table. Walk us through the 5 types of Qi.
Okay, let's start with Yuan Qi, source Qi. The texts say it's inherited from your parents stored in the kidneys, and it's the foundation of your vitality. Once it's gone, you die.
What is that physically?
That maps perfectly to your inherited stem cell reserves and your mitochondrial DNA. You are born with a fixed mitochondrial capacity and a finite number of stem cells. That is your source capital.
Okay, that makes sense. Ying Qi, nutritive Qi. This flows in the channels and nourishes the organs.
This is a cargo. This maps to the nutrients and stem cells flowing through the PVS, lane 1 of the Primo Vascular System. The PVS is the Ying delivery system.
Wei Qi, defensive Qi. Flows on the surface, protects us from wind and cold.
That is the immune system. Specifically the immune cells like mast cells and macrophages, patrolling the skin mediated by nitric oxide, which triggers the defense response. PVS lane 3.
Zong Qi, gathering Qi in the chest. Controls the heartbeat and breathing.
That is cardiopulmonary bioelectricity, the pacemaker nodes of the heart and the rhythmic electrical drivers of the lungs.
And finally, Zheng Qi, upright Qi.
That's the big picture. Homeostasis, the sum total of all 7 systems working in harmony to resist disease.
It's mapped. It's literally a one-to-one mapping.
The ancients observed the function, we found the molecule. It's the same territory, just different maps.
So now we have to go back to the steel man. We promised to answer those 3 objections.
Let's do it.
Objection 1, the reductionist. You're just renaming biology.
The answer is these aren't independent phenomena. That is the flaw in the reductionist argument. They think ATP happens over here and electricity happens over there. But look at the anatomy. Becker's electrical nodes are the same points where the nitric oxide is released. They are the same points where the connective tissue allows for piezoelectric generation. They are the same locations where the PVS surfaces.
So it's not 7 different things happening randomly. It's 7 things converging at specific nodes.
Exactly. They are integrated properties of a single system. You can't reduce it to just one because they all trigger each other. A needle leads to piezoelectricity, which triggers nitric oxide, which boosts blood flow, which helps mitochondria make ATP. It's a cascade.
Objection 2. The unification problem. Prove it's one network.
We answer this in episode 05, but let's hammer it home. The Primo Vascular System. The PVS is the physical wire that integrates them. It carries the photons, the stem cells, and the fluid. It is the structure where the physics converge. The PVS is the unification theory of Qi.
And objection 3. The Becker problem. Becker was fringe.
Becker was the spark. But the fire is mainstream now. The 2018 Interstitium paper was in Scientific Reports. That is top tier. The PVS research has been replicated at Auburn University. The electrical impedance studies are standard physics now. We don't need to rely on just Becker anymore. The science has gone mainstream. It just changed the terminology.
I want to talk about what happens when the system breaks. Because we don't just treat health, we treat pathology.
Right. Qi deficiency. Qi stagnation. These sound poetic until you decode them physically.
So let's decode Qi deficiency.
We touched on this. Mitochondrial failure. Low ATP.
Yeah.
But also low bioelectrical voltage. If your battery is dead, nothing works. That is deficiency.
Qi stagnation, pain, tightness, frustration.
Think physical blockage. The interstitial fluid isn't flowing. It's like a swamp instead of a river. Nitric oxide levels are low, so blood vessels are constricted. The fascia is stiff, so the piezoelectric signal can't propagate. It is a literal physical jam.
Qi rebellion, nausea, coughing, energy going the wrong way.
Reverse bioelectrical polarity. The current is flowing against the gradient. In the stomach, the electrical wave should go down. If the polarity clips, the wave goes up. Nausea.
And Qi collapse.
System-wide shutdown. The electrical grid fails. Mitochondria stop. This is shock. This is death.
This makes the treatment make so much sense. Why do we use Moxa?
Moxa creates heat, infrared and smoke, which may have chemical properties, but primarily it delivers that infrared frequency deep into the tissue while triggering nitric oxide. You are chemically and thermally rebooting the local area.
Why electroacupuncture?
You are bypassing the body's weak generator and hooking it up to a battery. You are forcing the DC current to flow, jump-starting the healing process.
And herbs.
Chemical upregulation. You are feeding the mitochondria the specific molecules they need to crank up the ATP factory.
This brings us to the most important part for the practitioners listening, the vocabulary section.
This is mandatory. If you want to survive in the modern medical landscape, you need to be fluent. You cannot speak TCM to everyone. You have to translate.
Okay, let's role play. I'm a cardiologist. I ask you, how does this acupuncture stuff work?
I don't say Qi. I say we are manipulating the body's DC bioelectric field to regulate autonomic function. We know from Dr. On's studies that these points have lower electrical impedance, allowing us to access the nervous system directly.
Boom. Sold. Now I'm an oncologist. I'm skeptical.
I mentioned Fritz Albert Popp. I talk about biophoton coherence as a biomarker of cellular health. I talk about how we're trying to support the body's homeostatic signaling to manage side effects.
Endocrinologist.
I talk about mitochondria. We're using adaptogenic herbs to upregulate ATP production and manage the cortisol response.
Sports medicine physician.
This is the easiest one. Piezoelectricity. I explain that the needle creates mechanical transduction in the fascia, generating a local electrical charge that accelerates tissue repair.
It's not compromise.
That is not compromise. That is fluency. It is respecting your listener enough to speak their language.
I want to bring in a couple of analogies we've discussed with colleagues because they perfectly capture this shift in thinking. The Wi-Fi analogy and the river analogy.
Oh, Dr. Sarah's Wi-Fi analogy is brilliant.
So if you ask a 19th century scientist to hand you a jar of Wi-Fi, they would look at you blankly.
Because Wi-Fi isn't a substance.
Exactly. It's not one particle. It's a composite of electromagnetic radio waves, electrical currents running through the router digital data protocols, and silicon processing chips. Break it down, it's all physics. Functionally, it's the thing that lets you stream movies.
Qi is the Wi-Fi of the body. Break it down, it's all measurable biology. Functionally, it's the organizing force of your body's regeneration, communication, defense, and metabolism.
And then there's the river analogy from Dr. Zheng, when someone asks, why do we even need the word qi if we have these 7 scientific terms?
Dr. Zheng says when a great river floods a valley, do you describe it as the movement of H2O molecules under gravitational acceleration following a pressure gradient?
No, you say the river is flooding.
The molecules are real. The physics is real. But the river is also real. Qi deficiency is the clinical diagnosis. The river. Mitochondrial dysfunction is the lab result, the H2O. Both are true.
They describe the same reality at different resolutions. Use the microscope when you need the molecule. You use the clinical pattern when you need the diagnosis.
And increasingly, we use both.
Which brings us to the closing of this entire arc. For the practitioners who have been listening across all 6 episodes of this series, take a second to look at where you are.
You started with a check engine light, a tongue, and a pulse.
And today you have something you didn't have before. You have a language that speaks in 2 directions simultaneously.
We've traveled a long way. Robert Becker mapped your meridians with a voltmeter in 1960. Fritz Albert Popp filmed your channels glowing in the dark in 1970.
The Interstitium was named as a new organ in 2018. 2 millennia after the Hongdi Ying described the system that governs the waterways of Qi, the language of anatomy finally caught up to the map.
It just took 7 instruments to do it.
So the vindication message to the practitioner is you don't have to choose.
You don't have to choose between tradition and science. You are the bridge.
You hold both truths. The next time someone tells you Qi doesn't exist, remember they aren't arguing with you. They are arguing with Becker, with Popp, with Langevin, with the 2018 Scientific Reports paper, and with every infrared camera that has ever filmed a meridian lighting up.
Qi isn't a metaphor. It isn't magic. It is the composite organizing physics of biological life. It is measured in volts, photons, ATP molecules, Pascal newtons of piezoelectric force, nanomoles of nitric oxide, and nanometers of infrared wavelength.
We found Qi 7 times. We just didn't recognize it because it wasn't wearing the right lab coat.
That is exactly it. Finally have the vocabulary. Use it.
Next episode, we're going to zoom in on one specific clinical question that this physics opens up. If Qi is real and measurable, can we build a machine that reads it?
And more importantly, can we build a machine that generates it on demand?
The future of acupuncture might not use a needle at all. Stay with us. We'll see you in episode 07.